Our next guest, Jimmy Kempski from PhillyVoice.com, joins us on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And Jimmy not only is the king of the stick figures, he'll tell you where Daryl Worley got his sneakers. Hey, Jimmy, how are you, pal?
Hey, Doug, how are you?
Good, thank you. I love the picture of the sneakers. I mean, it's not every day you see a guy with fur coming out of the back of his shoes, right?
Yeah, somebody identified exactly what they were, like, immediately, and they found a picture of them online, and apparently they're women's sneakers.
That's what I thought. They're Gucci Ace women's sneakers.
Yeah, hey, good for him. He pulled it off. So
the look worked. So, did the Eagles pull it off, though, Jimmy, in these two acquisitions? I guess we'll start with Michael Bennett since we played that Pearl Jam. What was your impressions of him today? Because we talked to John McMullen earlier in the show. He said he was impressed by Michael Bennett, despite what his book title may be.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. He knows what he's talking about in terms of just kind of knowing what's going on around the league and, like, kind of knowing history of teams and stuff like that. He threw out, like, a lot of, names of pass rushers that formerly played for the Eagles. I went as far as to say Juquay Parker, which is crazy. So it's the first Juquay Parker reference that I've heard in a long time. But, yeah, he was kind of entertaining to talk to, which is what I kind of expected. He was kind of a very loud personality when he was with Seattle. And really bringing him over, I thought, was robbery on the part of the Eagles. Because look at what they made two trades with Seattle over the last couple of years. And the first was when they traded Matt Tobin and a 7th-round pick to Seattle, 4 or 5. And then when they made this trade those picks were in the 2018 draft. So now when they made this trade for Michael Bennett, they traded Marcus Johnson and that same 5 that they got for Tobin to the Seahawks for Bennett and that same 7 that they gave away originally. So if you kind of put that down all on paper, it's basically the equivalent of them having traded Matt Tobin and Marcus Johnson for Michael Bennett. So the wizardry that Howie Roseman had with those two deals was kind of remarkable.
Right, as Charlie Sheen would have said back in the day, #winning. Jimmy Kempski's with us, PhillyVoice.com. We love talking with him all the time and getting his perspective on the Eagles. So the bulletin board quote out of Michael Bennett today was what?
Oh, yeah, he said, Dak is, he sees what's happening here, and he knows he's going to have to face me or us or whatever it was. And then he said, Dak, he sees it too, and he's looking forward to chasing Alex Smith around. So, yeah, that would be the bulletin board material out of him. But, for this point, really, from the Eagles' perspective, there's no bulletin board material. They can say whatever they want. They are the Super Bowl champions, so they're going to have a gigantic target on their back no matter what all season long. And actually, that's kind of one thing that he brings to the table in that, now all the Eagles players just about have, that deep playoff run experience and have, been to the Super Bowl. What Bennett brings is the experience of kind of being the hunted at this point, where the Eagles have never, kind of been that. So now the Eagles are going to be the hunted, and Michael Bennett is certainly used to that playing in Seattle. So I think that's kind of something that he brings to the table as well.
Jimmy, speaking of the Eagles being Super Bowl champions, how about the fact that Howie Roseman, you mentioned him, this is a guy who, you see so many GMs in the past, they kind of sat on their hands, or they were too tied, their hands were, when it came to making sure the teams were so competitive, whether it was the Broncos after their win, or the Ravens after theirs, or the Giants after their most recent Super Bowl. A lot of times teams that win the Super Bowl, they take a step back. It looks like Howie Roseman, he is intent with these moves and say, no, we're not taking a step or two backward. We're going to keep pushing forward with this team.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, they had to make cuts, certainly, because they're up against the cap. So, they were able to trade Torrey Smith instead of cutting him. I think they saw an opportunity there with Michael Bennett to bolster their pass rush. I think all along they knew that Vinny Curry was going to be gone one way or the other, whether that was by a trade or by him taking by release. I don't think there was going to be a pay cut big enough that would have that would have had them keep Vinny Curry. So Yeah, I mean, certainly they're still aggressive to a certain degree with those two trades. They weren't able to kind of make any splash-free signings like they have in the past. They added the linebacker from Denver, of course, and yeah, so they've done kind of smaller things like that. But yeah, I don't think there's any kind of quote unquote resting on laurels with the Eagles. They're going to continue to be aggressive and do whatever they can to improve the roster. And I think they kind of smell that they can, compete for another Super Bowl again in 2018, and they're absolutely, certainly going to go for it.
They added to their strength by bringing in Bennett, by bringing in Haloti Ngata. This is a team that was known for their defensive line rotation. So how does adding to the defensive line help this defense overall in 2018?
Well, yeah, that's what you said. So they have the big rotation. When your backup defensive ends are Chris Long and Michael Bennett, your primary backup defensive tackle is Haloti Ngata, then you're in pretty good shape. So, yeah, I mean, they're heading it, and that's assuming, of course, Derek Barnett is the starter. I mentioned Michael, but I think Michael Bennett will kind of be like something of a role player. But they're going to rotate those guys in and out. And I think Haloti Ngata actually, despite being 34 years old, I think he's actually a little bit of an upgrade from Bo Allen, although obviously much more of a short-term one than what you'd have in Bo Allen. But yeah, I mean, Michael Bennett even said today they have a chance to be one of the best defensive lines in history. I don't know if I go quite there yet, but they are very, very deep. They're certainly talented. They don't have like that one real, I guess, just strike all kinds of fear into the opposing offensive coordinator edge rusher. Although they have a number of very good ones in Brandon Graham, Michael Bennett, Derek Barnett, and Chris Long. They do kind of have that stud defensive tackle in Fletcher Cox, but Cox and Timmy Jernigan and now Haloti Ngata on the inside, and then those four guys on the outside. I mean, they're rolling 7 deep there on the defensive line, and even guys like Brandon Graham, as we saw in the Super Bowl on that forced fumble, and Michael Bennett, they can move inside as well on passing down. So you're looking at a potential rotation. Like when they get into 3rd and long, you're looking at Derek Barnett, Brandon Graham, Michael Bennett, and Fletcher Cox as your 4 down linemen coming after the quarterback. And in my view, they're going to force a lot of turnovers in 2018, just like they did in 2017.
What's your perspective on the addition of Daryl Worley? Is he a guy who might be a candidate to play on the inside slot with Patrick Robinson no longer here? Or do you think that might inside slot be for Malcolm Jenkins and Worley will be part of the outside crew?
I think Worley's probably going to play on the outside. That's primarily what he did with Carolina, as he noted today. But I don't know. I mean, what they don't have right now is sort of a prototypical slot corner. I think they're going to look at they don't really need that. They're really deep at corner now, too. So you wouldn't think that they'd look at that in the draft. But I think if a slot corner kind of presented himself, then that'd be an area where they look, or potentially, drafting a safety that has some slot corner experience in college. I think certainly that would be of interest to them as well. But yeah, right now they have a lot of corners, and they all play on the outside. So I don't know exactly what they're going to do. Maybe Jalen Mills can move into the slot, but they do have a deep and talented group there as well now, and very young. So Worley's 23, Mills, Darby, Sidney Jones, and that whole and Rasul Douglas. They're all either 24 years old or younger. So I mean, they just have all kinds of youth at that position, and they're only going to get better.
Yeah, Jimmy, that was going to be my follow-up. What your thoughts were on Jalen Mills, if he could move into that inside slot, and if his skill set fits that position.
Well, he played safety in college, too, in addition to corner, and he did cover slot receivers, and I think that's, I think that when he came out, I remember thinking that was sort of a more natural position for him, because the knock on him was that he didn't have – and he doesn't really have great long speed. Now you saw him, I think, get beat a little bit more on deep balls, just in terms of receivers blowing by him in 2016. Not necessarily as much last year. Last year when he did get beat, he was kind of jumping on double moves. So, but I do think that him moving into the slot is a possibility, because I think that kind of fits his skill set. Another potential knock on him coming out of college is that he wasn't viewed as a really great or willing tackler, and that's not at all what we've seen so far in the pros. He's absolutely a willing tackler, and has made himself into a pretty good tackler after just 2 years in the NFL. So from the slot position, you want those guys to be able to make tackles because they're obviously closer to because they're closer to the action there in the middle of the field. So when you have running plays, you want those guys to be able to tackle. So I think that's a position that he'd be able to handle.
Jimmy Kempski with us, Eagles beat writer for PhillyVoice.com. Check out his article, The Eagles' 5 Biggest Offseason Needs, updated at PhillyVoice.com, and updated, of course, because, as you write, Jimmy, the meaty part of free agency is come and gone, but there are still bargain bin guys to be found. Where do you think they stand right now of their needs that are still out there, and what are the most pressing needs that they still have to address?
Yeah, I think running back is one. And when I wrote that article, I really kind of had the draft more in mind than free agency. Right now, in terms of free agency, I think they want to be careful not to sign guys to anything more than a veteran minimum deal, or they want to try to maybe limit their free agent acquisitions to players that have been cut. And the reason why is because if they don't make any more signings from other teams, if they don't sign any more players that are just naturally free agents, then they are in line to pick up 3 compensatory draft picks in the 2019 draft. And right now, I project them to be, one of them would be a 4th-round pick, and then the other 2 would be 6th-round picks. So if they sign a player to a new deal that's more than the veteran minimum, then that'll take away one of those comp picks. And they need all the draft picks they can get, obviously, because in a few years or a couple of years down the road, they're going to have to sign Carson Wentz to a contract extension. And that's going to be really expensive. So they need all the cheap labor they can get. And the cheap labor, the best way to have cheap labor on your football team is to connect on draft picks. So the more lottery tickets they have in the draft, and the better off they'll be, or the more able they'll be able to sign Carson Wentz to that contract extension while also kind of keeping their other core players in place. So I'd be surprised if they signed anyone else at this point. That wasn't already cut by another team, because those players don't count toward that compensatory pick formula, or if they can sign guys to like veteran minimum deals, because they wouldn't count toward that formula either. So, sorry, to get back to your original question in terms of team needs, I think running back is an area that they'll look at in the draft. I think safety is an area that they'll look at in the draft. I think that you look at the tight end position, clearly when you lose Brent Selleck and Trey Burton, you got to fill in those spots with they may sign a veteran that gets cut, or I think certainly they're going to try to draft one in this upcoming draft, because it's thought of as a pretty deep group at that position. But yeah, certainly running back, tight ends, safety, wide receiver would be another one, obviously, with Torrey Smith being gone and then trading Marcus Johnson. I forget what the 5th one was, but
offensive tackle. It was offensive tackle.
Oh yeah, offensive tackle. Yeah, I think that's something that you just always kind of look for, because they're hard to find. And at some point, Jason Peters is going to be retiring. And you look at the Dallas Cowboys last year, when they lost Tyron Smith for a game, they just completely fell apart. Like the guy that had to fill in for him, when he was in there, the opposing defensive end was able to just wreck the game in a few different games. So even if Jason Peters is gone and you believe in Halapoulivaati Vaitai as a starter, you still need another swing tackle for depth, or else that can kind of happen to you. So the sooner they can find a tackle in the draft and begin to develop him, the better off I think they'll be.
Sticking with the draft, Jimmy, do you think how many deals Howie's got to make, considering they have no 3rd, they have no 2nd-round pick, they only have a 1st, 2 4ths, a 5th, a 6th, and a 7th. So how much maneuvering do you think Howie's going to have to make leading up to the draft, considering that how much he loves having multiple draft picks?
Yeah, I think normally I'm just from my own personal beliefs. I don't think that trading back is the best idea in most years. I know the Eagles like to be pick 20 or higher. I think they think that that's kind of where the cutoff traditionally is in terms of where you can find a sort of an impact player and guys that are just not. They have a much better chances, I'll put it that way, of finding an impact player in picks 1 to 20 than you do beyond there. So that's kind of what their philosophy is there. They're not going to get up into that area. So picking at pick number 32, obviously, with winning the Super Bowl, I think this is one year where maybe they would consider trading back and landing some extra picks if they can find a willing partner to kind of make that kind of deal. that, of course, would not be fun on draft day when the draft is in Dallas and they have a chance to go up to the podium and say, with the 32nd pick, the Super Bowl winning Eagles, blah, 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 blah. So that's got to be the negative side effect there. But if there was one year where I thought it made sense to trade back, this would be it, because they do need draft picks, as I noted before. And the guy that you get at pick number 32 isn't going to be that much different than the guy that you get at, say, pick number 47 or something like that.
He's Jimmy Kempski, the Eagles beat writer for PhillyVoice.com. You can find him on Twitter at Jimmy Kempski. That's Kempski. And by the way, if you don't check out PhillyVoice.com, you're doing something wrong, because where else can you spend your weekend like I did reading an in-depth article on the different shades of Jim Gardner's mustache, Jimmy? I mean, come on.
That was not by me, but I also enjoyed that as well.
Please extend my well wishes to Daniel Craig, not the James Bond Daniel Craig, for that. I thought that was great. You can find all kinds of stuff at PhillyVoice.com.
Will do. Appreciate that.
Thank you for coming on with us, Jimmy. Jimmy appeared with us via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you again, bud.
All right, guys. Take care.